I got to say that I need more laughter in my life right now. I actually ended up in a little bit of a weird situation with a relative, a very close relative who was very upset about the election results and in some way, shape, or form was blaming me for it. And I can't even explain how this all worked out. But I think it's, people just taking all this too much to heart. And, by the way, I wrote an article yesterday. You can read it at KTAR.com. And it warns people, don't, be careful of the voters that you get mad at because you might be getting mad at yourself, essentially, because of the way the vote laid out in Arizona. You had people who voted for a Republican for president, a Democrat for the Senate, voted for what was obviously a very Republican proposition, the border initiative. Actually, that was a referendum. And then also voted for the initiative that was to put abortion access into our Arizona Constitution. So if you get a second, check that out and maybe send it to somebody who who's kind of losing their mind over the election. It may or may not help. I don't know. All right, but we got a lot planned for you on our election results special. In just a few minutes, political strategist, former Republican state legislator Stan Barnes is going to join me to talk about the future of Arizona's Republican Party, what the makeup of the state legislature could be when all the votes finally get counted. At around 12:45, we'll be joined by Garrett Archer, data analyst with our TV partners at ABC 15. He's former senior elections analyst for the Secretary of State's office. He's going to join us to talk about where we stand on the ballot count in Arizona and Maricopa County. He follows this stuff like nobody's business. He coined the term Maricopa incoming because, in 2020, and everybody follows him because of that. And he's going to take us through where we are as far as the ballots that have been counted, how many more are left to be counted, why it takes us so long to count. And we'll talk with our guest a little after 1 o'clock about that as well. Adrian Fontes, Arizona Secretary of State, is going to join me to talk about how the voting went, how we can improve efficiency, if there's any way we can get the votes counted faster in Arizona. And he is one of those guys that never holds back. He's got an opinion on all this stuff. Well, he's an elections official. And he's a Marine, right? So he's, most Marines I know, unless they're talking to a commanding officer, are going to give you exactly what their opinion is. And at around 1:15, you're going to hear from Steven Slugocki, who is the former chairman of the Maricopa County Democratic Party. He talked with Jamie West and me on Arizona's Morning News today about the path forward for Arizona's and the National Democratic Party. What do they do now that they're, kind of licking their wounds and trying to figure out where do we go wrong on messaging? Is it because we changed horses in midstream, if you will, going from Biden to Harris? What was that there? But locally, here in Arizona, Democrats are definitely sitting in a much better position than they were 4 years ago. We have a Democratic governor. We have a Democratic Secretary of State, second in line. You got an attorney general who's a Democrat. So you've got a lot of people who are Democrats in some positions of power in this state. So, on the whole, where does the Arizona Democratic Party stand? And then we're going to wrap up our special elections results show by chatting with Chris and Joe, and Cochise County Sheriff Mark Dannels is going to join me to talk about the impact that Prop 314's passage is going to have on border sheriffs. Of course, Prop 314 is, of course, the so-called Protect the Border Act. But first, wanted to get you updated on the latest results in the races that have yet to be decided in our state. Now, the presidential race actually technically lands in that category, even though it won't affect the nationwide results. There is still a chance Harris could win Arizona.
Like 1 out of 100?
More like 1 out of 1,000,000.
Mm-hmm. So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
But not a realistic chance that Donald Trump won't win Arizona, as he still has about a 136,000 vote lead. Now, that's 136,000 votes out of the nearly 2.5 million ballots that have been counted. That translates to a 5.5% lead for Trump in Arizona. So there's really no realistic path for Harris to win Arizona. And even if she did, it's over, right? The Electoral College is pretty much been decided at this point. As far as the U.S. Senate race goes, you got Democrat Ruben Gallego with a lead over Republican Kari Lake. That lead right now, just a hair under 53,000 votes, with just a tad more than 2.4 million votes counted in that race. That equates to a 2.2% lead for Ruben Gallego. Still too close to call. And it's much closer than, say, the polling we were seeing, I don't know, even 2 months ago. You know, there was double-digit leads for Ruben Gallego in some polls a couple of months ago. That tightened as we got closer to the election. And, of course, the most important poll that matters is what happens at the polling place. And right now, a 2.2% lead for Ruben Gallego. As far as the congressional races go, you got District 6. Republican incumbent Juan Ciscomani has about a 1,600 vote lead over Democrat Kirsten Engel. That's out of 288,000 votes counted so far. So that's only a 0.5% lead for Ciscomani in the congressional district that covers southeastern Arizona, a good chunk of Pima County, and southern Pinal County. And this is one of those races that could help determine the balance of power in the United States House, which has yet to be decided. And another race that could help decide that is going on in District 1, Congressional District 1, which covers the Northeast Valley. You've got incumbent Republican David Schweikert. He's leading Democrat Amish Shah by about 9,400 votes. That's out of 336,000 votes that have been tallied so far there. That equates to a 2.8% lead for Schweikert. By the way, this is a district that has seen a dramatic change over the years from a solidly Republican district to a moderate, even slightly left-leaning district. But for some reason, David Schweikert has found the ability to talk to those voters as well. I don't know if it's going to result in a win there, but right now he's got the lead. And you've got a couple of newcomers to Congress from Arizona. That would be Democrat Yasmin Ansari, the former vice mayor for Phoenix, who is going to represent Ruben Gallego's current congressional district, which covers downtown and South Phoenix as well as parts of Glendale. And you've got Republican Abe Hamadeh, who replaces Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, who just won her race to be the next county supervisor for the West Valley. A lot of people kind of questioning that whole thing. They're like, really? Debbie Lesko? Why is she taking a step back? She's a congresswoman. Why is she going to become a county supervisor? What's that? Well, I don't know if you remember. We talked about this when I hosted a special for the primary vote, and that is that Debbie Lesko actually has more constituents as a county supervisor than she had as a member of Congress. By the way, Ansari is going to be the first Democratic Iranian-American woman elected to the House and is going to be the youngest Democratic woman in this upcoming Congress. She says she's hoping her party can win a House majority, but it's going to be an uphill battle either way.
In my view, the incoming Trump presidency will have dire consequences for our planet, our reproductive rights, our economy, and our democracy.
All right, still to come here, we're going to chat with my friend Stan Barnes, who, while he spent a lot of time in the state legislature and he's been a political strategist for a long time in Arizona, I actually first met him working on the radio. Like it was his second career after being a state legislator. Right now, I'm joined by political strategist, former Republican state legislator, and my friend Stan Barnes to talk about the future of Arizona's Republican Party and what the makeup of the state legislature will be once all the votes get counted. So, Stan, we talked a lot over the last few months about where the Republican Party will possibly head if Donald Trump's defeated, but that didn't happen. So is the GOP going to continue to be created in his image?
Yeah, short answer, yes.
You got to turn your... I was just telling everybody how you... There you go.
Right there?
I was just telling everybody how I met you in radio. I didn't meet you in politics.
What an embarrassing way to start. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
The short answer is yes, and depending on where you sit, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. But I think we should start thinking of the Republican Party as the nationalist populist party, because that is what encompasses the new philosophy of it, and more of an inward looking, and as opposed to whatever we've been on the international stage, and a lot more of completely unembarrassed about punishing those actors that would sell in the United States but not benefit the United States. Trump tariffs and the like, jobs here and the like. A very aggressive we're going to let legal immigration take place, but we're going to be hyper on illegal immigration and the way we're going to do the southern border. I think it is a functioning majority. It's just kind of hard to hold together, and it's kind of a new coalition that has a lot more brown and black voters that go along with the traditional conservative white voters that have been there for the Republican Party. So we're in the middle of it, Jim. We can't see the forest because we're in the trees. The realignment of these two parties is happening before our eyes.
As many people who might say Donald Trump will try to get a third term. He'll try. I don't think he will.
No.
Right. But so who is his successor? And I mean, I don't mean to fast forward 4 years before this election results is completely there. Is J.D. Vance the guy who's going to be taking up this mantle? Well, you're saying we're kind of at the at the arc of all this.
We are in the front end, and it's so fun that this is the first moment I've ever thought about 4 years from now. Right on live radio.
You are what kind of a political strategist are you?
I know. I should be thinking generationally.
Yeah.
No, there's going to be a fist fight to be Trump's heir, but J.D. Vance has got to be in the first chair for the moment.
Yeah.
But the Vivek Ramaswamy types are out there, and it won't be. It won't be easy, but it might be very interesting and net positive for the Republican Party. But this is the direction it's going. Whatever you want to think of as Make America Great Again or America First, whatever it is, this is the new Republican Party. It is not the old Chamber of Commerce wing of the world with the social conservatives of the world making a drug deal together, one to fund it and one to give it the spirit. That's gone now, and it's an entirely different. And that makes the Democratic Party also entirely different.
Yeah, they don't seem to be the party of the working class nearly as much as they used to be.
They as Victor Davis Hanson said in a column, they are the party of the rich and the people that are fed by the government. And those are not his exact words. It basically is what
political
he said.
Class
the bottom of the economic strata and the very top, everybody in the middle is starting to gravitate toward that nationalist populist party, including the most dramatic move in Latino voters we have ever seen.
It's huge.
And Jim, when I was just saying outside, when I was a freshman legislator 30-something years ago, I was told, enjoy it while you can in the majority because Arizona's going to be brown. There's going to be a lot more Latino Hispanics. They're Democrat. You're going to be in the minority Republican. Well, they didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
Because yesterday, Trump won almost half of them and did win more than half of the men that consider themselves Latino. Right before our eyes, that is a dramatic change in the political world.
It's huge, but I've also said that, in so many ways, all voters worry about the same exact things.
Amen.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Democrats, how come they haven't thought that? They've been treating them as some sort of special siloed constituency, and they're paying the price. If you're a Democrat today, this is a bad week all the way around. The legislature is going to be more Republican in some ways, at least another member in the House, for instance, maybe in the Senate. And other than Kari Lake dogging it, Ciscomani's going to survive, Schweikert's going to survive. All three corporation
you think so?
commissioners.
Those are a couple of races that I feel like are a little too close to call still. Do you think that's...
No, I mean, you have to be temperate in your actions here on the radio. I get to be flippant about it.
Okay.
No, I think they are going to survive. The trends are all in their direction.
Yeah, no, I think that's true for sure. I was going to ask you about Kari Lake. She's not likely to win. What does that mean for the Arizona Republican Party? We just talked about the National Republican Party, especially when big Trump supporters like Andy Biggs and Paul Gosar continue to win in their congressional districts, and she cannot win a statewide election.
Yeah, but now Kari's probably starting to take this personally because I think there is a personal component.
You're personal friends with her, by the way,
I am
too.
personal friends with her, and I have a lot of respect for her. But having said that, this is politics, right? And she has went out of her way to destroy her own relationship with the McCain constituency, and it could not be put back together. And she's paying the price for her own action, regrettably. Because I'm a Republican. I wanted to see a Republican Senate in the United States Senate. But to come out of to be a non-politician, step into the arena, be the gubernatorial nominee in your first round, and then not close the deal, and then turn right around and be the Senate nominee and not close the deal, which apparently she won't. That's a 1-2 punch we have not seen in our lifetime. I don't know what she does next, but the race for who's going to lead the party and be the gubernatorial nominee, because the gubernatorial election is already begun as of Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that behind the curtain thing is already a fist fight between people that want to be the nominee for Kari has not taken herself out of that yet. And so who knows what she'll do. But the party's going to have a very difficult 2 years, really.
You're a native Arizonan. You've been watching politics here for a long time. Did you ever think that there would be an election where Arizona would elect a Republican president, and we would also see a majority in the United States Senate, but Arizona wouldn't play a part in that?
I know it. It's really astounding. And it all comes down, for better or for worse, to Kari Lake, the person. And it's a textbook example of the candidate matters. More than the issues, more than a lot of other things. The candidate herself matters. And in this case, I do think Kari's going to come in second again. What she does next is she's got a lot of opportunity. She's got a Trump White House. Perhaps there's something there for her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Political Action Committee, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. But I in terms of a space in leading the Republican Party in Arizona, I don't think that's going to work out. I mean, you can't be a 1-2 miss. Not to mention what she did with Jeff DeWitt and all of that tussle at the top of the party apparatus. I don't know where her home is politically now for that.
So you touched on it briefly, but where does the state legislature stand? I was telling you out in the lobby there, I'm like, I open up the state legislative results, and I'm like, I can't read through all these. Where is it going to? Is it going to stay? Is the House and the state Senate going to stay in Republican hands?
It's your ADD you need to work on.
I know.
It is going to stay. And as I said, I don't have to be temperate about it. I get to be bold about it. But yeah. I'm confidently bold that the state House, which is now 31 Republicans, is going to be 32 Republicans, maybe even 33. And the state Senate, which is now 16, is going to be 16, maybe even 17.
Wow.
And we're going to know that in the next couple days. But all the trends with the votes that get counted are benefiting the Republicans, and they keep closing the gap. And in the state House, a woman named Pena, who's a Republican from southern Arizona along the border, a very Democratic district, everyone knew she was going to lose. It was a fluke she was there in the first place. She won. She won first place.
Yeah.
So the Republicans did really well in Arizona in the state legislative level.
So all this talk about Arizona turning blue doesn't seem to be the case with the outlier of Kari Lake.
What happened, this is a Republican state. This is a center-right state, I should say. Mm-hmm. And the reason we have a Democratic governor and Secretary of State and Attorney General is because of the Trump phenomenon and the wedge in the Republican Party and the McCain constituency not knowing what to do with itself. And that's why those members won. It can't be, I don't think it can be duplicated again in the next cycle, but we all get to see that play out in 2 years.
Well, could anybody ever duplicate Donald Trump, honestly, Stan?
I'm telling you, we are living in interesting times.
Yes, we are. And that's a Chinese curse,
yes,
by the way. All right, that's Stan Barnes, political consultant, former state legislator, and my friend from the radio who's still trying to figure out how to even turn on or off his microphone switch. Now, I'm joined by Garrett Archer, data analyst with our TV partners at ABC 15, the former senior elections analyst for the Secretary of State's office. I think you told me recently that you were the only elections analyst at the Secretary of State's office.
Don't tell my secret.
But
my title said senior.
There you go. That's all right. I'm the senior co-host of Arizona's Morning News. So he's joining me to talk about where we stand on the ballot count in Arizona and Maricopa County, why it takes us so long to count too. But let's start with how many more ballots have yet to be counted, or at least when we'll get it, and also when we'll get our next release of those numbers.
Sure. So I'm looking at the site right now in Maricopa County, which is, the largest county, of course, about 584. So about 600,000 ballots left to count in Maricopa County. We're not fully, all counties are not accounted for quite yet, but the big ones are. And right now they estimate about 940,000. So we'll probably get close to 1 million more left to count statewide.
All right. When's your next Maricopa incoming tweet?
Typically, it's going to be between the hours of 6 and 7. So tonight. So sometimes they push to 5. What they will do is they will send out a tweet as well as an email to people on their email list and sort of tell them what's going to happen tonight, what's sort of the order of operations, and an estimate of how many ballots are going to be tabulated.
All right. And what do you think? Do you have any kind of an estimate on how many numbers we're going to get tonight? How many votes we're going to get tonight? Ballots?
So looking at some of the, again, Maricopa, very transparent county, so they have ways for us to sort of pick out data and tease things. So they have we were able to sort of tease out what some of the party breakouts were going to be of these next ballots. Of course, we don't know how they actually voted, just their party breakouts. And
how they're registered.
How they're registered.
Right.
We don't know how they voted, of course. But it's about 200,000 ballots. So basically, we're expecting about 200,000 ballots probably today and another 200,000 tomorrow. So
okay. All right. And any idea on the breakdown of those, like the registration goes?
The ones tonight, depending on how those independents break, probably a little more friendly to Lake. Now, we're all basically paying attention to the U.S. Senate race now.
Right,
the presidential race is pretty much out here. It's completely out of contention, obviously, and it's been called, nationally. But so the U.S. Senate race tonight, probably a little friendly to Lake, and then tomorrow, probably not as friendly. So it'll be interesting to see what that actual breakdown is, because she needs to win Maricopa County ballots by about 54% in order to catch up to Ruben Gallego right now.
But she's doing pretty good outside of Maricopa County.
Rural County is very, very friendly to the GOP and Lake. She is underperforming Donald Trump a little bit in those counties, but we're only talking about a 5-point underperformance. She's still those ballots breaking 60-40, sometimes 70-30. I've even seen some 80-20s.
We're going to have Adrian Fontes in here in a few minutes, and I'm going to ask him more about how to fix this if one considers it a problem. But why does it take so long for this to all get released? And this is kind of funny because when you sat down, I said, remember we've been talking about for like 2 years, Arizona is going to decide the presidential election and we're a battleground state. And by the time we're done counting, everybody's like, yeah, we already moved on. Yeah, we already decided this election, right?
Yeah, no, it's and of course, Mr. Fontes will go a little farther into it, but it's because the ballots that are dropped off on election day, I think news media and everyone sort of said that, hey, if you drop your ballots on election day, it's going to take a little time for
your mail-in ballot.
Yeah, your mail-in ballot.
Yeah.
Excuse me, your mail-in ballot. So these mail-in ballots, when they're dropped off on election day in those little storage bins, they have to be sent to the processing facility, which they are then scanned in through Renbeck. And then after they're scanned, they have to be signature verified. So that is just a process. Every ballot has to have a human look at that ballot. And there's only so much space you can do in a warehouse where you put people in to verify signatures. They have a whole bunch of people doing that, but that is a bottleneck that, they don't have 500 people verifying signatures.
Did I screw it up? I didn't do this. I didn't do that this time. I didn't drop off my mail-in ballot day of, but I early voted on the day before, which it's still known as emergency voting. I voted the day before. Did I gum up the works?
No.
Okay.
Although if you voted the day before, your ballot hasn't probably been tabulated yet. Typically,
so
with
I am part of the problem.
with high volume general elections, like presidential elections, there usually is a bit of a backlog that they do have to deal with. So, for example, the last couple of days, we've been seeing ballots that were typically from before October 31st. So now we're going to see the November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th ballots. Now, the volume of those ballots are typically smaller because that's when they, at that point, all the counties are telling people, hey, stop mailing in your ballots because we're not sure if we're going to get it.
Right.
And so the mail volume does actually drop a little bit.
How different is the makeup of the electorate in Arizona from the elections we held 2 and 4 years ago? So
that's an interesting question. This election is, I would say, sort of a regression to the mean to a certain extent, back to what we used to be prior to the COVID pandemic. 2020 and 2022, especially 2022, were really pandemic elections because the early ballot coalition here, Democrats really turned in their ballots. I mean, it was almost, mailed in their ballots.
Yeah.
The amount of Democrats that mailed in their ballots in many ways exceeded Republicans for almost the entire period of early voting, even with registration at a registration disadvantage. This year, the Republicans mailed in their ballot at higher rates than Democrats pretty much the entire time, full stop. And that is how it used to be back in 2014, 2012, 2016. So again, we're sort of back to what we used to be. And then again, that's why even though the Election Day vote was still very Republican friendly, these drop-off votes are not they're not proving to be as Republican friendly. And that's simply because, again, that drop-off pool of voters is more sort of what it used to be rather than what it is, with the post-pandemic elections.
It was interesting to hear Donald Trump say during the last few weeks of the election, mail in your ballots. And this is a guy who had told everybody that you don't want to mail in your ballots. That can't be trusted. And, we should go to, one-day voting and paper ballots and all that. So that probably changed the minds of some Republican voters that it's okay to do mail-in.
Whatever it was, there was definitely a mind change of Republican voters because they went from very strongly voting in person to very, very strongly voting early. Now, don't get me wrong, back in 2022, a majority of Republicans still voted early, but just the pool of voters just really, really shrank in 2022 that were voting early. And the election day was really gangbusters for Republicans in Maricopa County. But this time, again, it's sort of more what it was in 2016.
All right. Garrett, always enjoy it. You've got the mind that I wish I had. Nothing escapes that mind, and mine is like constantly. Stan said it best. My ADD is just. I even added a D. My ADD is just out of control right now, trying to read through all these election results. I appreciate your time, Garrett.
Absolutely.
All right. Right now, though, I'm joined by Adrian Fontes. You're going to have to turn on your own microphone button. There you go.
That one?
That's it. You got it.
Look at that. I'm my own technician today.
He's Arizona's Secretary of State. He's here to talk with us about how the vote went, how we can improve efficiency, if there's any way we can get the votes counted faster in Arizona. I know you got strong opinions about all this stuff because you got a strong opinion about everything.
Just about everything.
Yeah. But first, have you learned of anything happening that's make you change your attitude of all's well in election land right now? As far as the count goes and polling places?
We had a great election in Arizona in 2024. We're still ongoing, though. This is a very long process. It has always been a long process. The statutes mandate that it's a long process, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, if we want to make it a shorter process, we can change some of the statutes, and folks can have that conversation. But we're following the law, and the law says that we have to have very strict compliance with all of the security measures that we have and all the ways that we account for every single one of our ballots, and that takes a lot of time. And that's what, through our representative form of government, folks want, and that's what they've got. And so, I hear a lot of people saying, well, why aren't we done yet? Why aren't we done yet? And then creating all kinds of weird mythologies around that. We're not done because we're following the law. We've never been quick, ever.
Right.
It's just that now people really care about the results because you can't call the results as quick as you could.
Right.
The media call is not the official results. They're two different things. And when you have very tight margins and very tight races, it just takes longer to call the races. And that's just the reality that we have. So, it's a happy annoyance, this conversation, as far as I'm concerned. If we want it faster, we got to change the law.
Absolutely, that's the case. So, how do you feel about changing the law? I was seeing something earlier from a guy I don't imagine you agree with on much politically, Warren Peterson, the state Senate president. He wants to change it so that maybe you can only drop off your mail-in ballots at the latest on a Friday before Election Day. Would that speed things along?
What it would do is it would reduce access that voters currently have, and I'm not a fan of that.
Okay.
So I have my guardrails, right? When I say change the law so that the counties actually have the funding they need to do this quick enough. Change the law so that you have the infrastructure and the support necessary to continue to have all the access that we want, that Arizonans love to have, and get the results that some people are really clamoring for. We can do that, but we have to have a level-headed approach that's based in values, right? My values tell me that reducing access that voters have is a bad idea. And so that's why I disagree with that particular approach, because sometimes people just get caught up in their day-to-day lives. Sometimes your back is up against the wall and you're getting your ballot by mail because you can't go and vote on Tuesday because your life doesn't work like that. And then sometimes it gets stuck under a bunch of utility bills. The kid moves it because you told them to clean that room, and they move it over there. Yeah. And you've got it, and it's Saturday before Election Day. Now what?
Yeah.
Now you've got to take a day off of work? No. We cannot reduce access just so that some people can get a little bit more results earlier. That having been said, we can do other things. So I want to have that conversation. And Warren Peterson's a decent guy. We disagree politically, but I find him to be earnest. And so I'm happy to work with the guy and anybody else. But I don't want to stop voters from having the access that they have now just because we want to get our results earlier. That's not right.
So the only way we can have it both ways is to add more people to the process of the counting. Is that it?
There are three things that election results require, but you can only have two.
Okay.
You can have it accurate, which everybody wants.
Yeah.
You can have it cheap, or you can have it fast. Okay? Now, everybody wants accurate.
Yeah.
So what do you want? You want cheap or you want fast?
Yeah.
You can't have both of those two.
Okay.
Okay, so we can agree on accurate, right? Like
Right.
you and me can
Yeah.
speak for everybody in the world right
Absolutely,
now.
yeah.
Okay. Do you want it cheap or do you want it fast?
Well, I think it depends on if you're a fiscal conservative or not.
Well, look.
But I think also there's a lot of fiscal conservatives who are like, yeah, well, let's pay a lot of money to find out quickly, though.
I mean, if they want to do that, that's fine. We spend tons of money on all kinds of. 2 years ago, we spent $15 million on a rodeo in Prescott. And while I'm a fan of rodeo, I think it's great. Did we really want to do that? Like, was that a big priority for the state to spend $15 million on that? And that was in a Republican district, Republican fiscal conservative dollars. Our priorities have to be our voters, and they have to acknowledge those common sense day-to-day issues that Arizonans think about, not the political issues that people like me who get elected think about. We've got to lead from the people, not lead from the pulpit, right? The political pulpit. That, to me, is the way that we should generally look at all of our policies, and that's why I'm happy to have the conversation, right? But I'm not willing to sacrifice access that Arizonans have just so that, the press can get their numbers in quicker.
If you were to, boy, you don't like us very much, I guess.
No, I like you
I'm
guys. You guys are just too anxious.
It's like all chewing our nails off and stuff over here. If you were to introduce a bill to the legislature at the beginning of the session that would move this in the direction you'd like to see it move, what would that bill look like?
Well, first and foremost, I would probably get a one-time big giant bucket of money put aside. And I would ask that the Secretary of State be responsible for doling it out under well-laid plans by each of the counties. And so it would basically be a granting program to allow them to do improvements in their systems and their infrastructure that would help them do things better. I'm absolutely certain that a large number of those counties who are underfunded themselves, because county funding depends on state funding to a great degree,
right,
would be willing to what we could do is look long-term, budget out long-term and say, okay, this county needs new networking infrastructure for their information technology systems. This county needs a new warehouse. That one's going to be a big deal, right? This county over here needs that. And so what you could have is, and is it a big bucket of money that the Secretary of State controls? Yes. But I'm not always going to be the Secretary of State.
Right.
I think this is a common sense, long-term way that you could have experts in the field look at the function of our infrastructure, right? Look at this from a bureaucratic perspective. Does this sound like big government? Yes, it is. This is what government does. We don't want to contract out our elections. That would be a really bad idea. But what we do want to have is level heads working together over a long term in an apolitical way that gives the administrators the tools they need to give us the products that we want. That, to me, is a big fundamental change that folks are not talking about. And they're not talking about it, I would argue, because for political reasons. Now, if I was a Republican, they might be talking about it. And maybe this and other proposals that we have on the table might be more welcome. But isn't that too bad, right? The guy who knows about as much as anybody else in the state about elections isn't going to be able to have those conversations because he happens to be a Democrat. A Democrat, by the way, who ran a really, really good presidential election cycle this year, but for the fact that some of the counties had minor issues, like counting in Maricopa County. But that's not a statewide issue, right? We can help them. Everybody can work in this together. And again, we are all in this together, but we've got to realize that there are real solutions that we can be having, but we got to have those conversations.
I've lived in Navajo County, I've lived in Coconino County, I've lived in Pima County, and I've lived in Maricopa County. Which one of those four does the worst job, Adrian Fontes? I'm going to put that out there. See,
You're going to ask me which one of those does the worst job?
I'm not gonna make you answer that.
That's a great question.
I'm not even going to make you say who does the best job out of those.
Here's the thing. You missed living down in Santa Cruz County, my home county, which
It's a beautiful place.
It's gorgeous down there.
It is a beautiful, beautiful place. And I know you grew up there, and your family's been in that area for a lot of generations. So appreciate you taking time this afternoon to join us here on our election special.
Happy to be here, Jim.
Yeah, and we'll hope to get you on Arizona's Morning News soon, especially if you introduce a bill at the legislature to try and get this funding.
Well, we've got a couple in the hopper. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Earlier today, you know, of course, with Donald Trump retaking the White House, the U.S. Senate swinging to Republican control, and there's a good chance that the GOP could retain control of the House of Representatives as well. Where does the Democratic Party go from here? So earlier today on Arizona's Morning News, Jamie West and I talked with Steven Slugocki. He is the former chairman of the Maricopa County Democratic Party. And here's my first question to him. What do you credit the most for the Republican victories and Donald Trump winning every battleground state?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I guess we were saying I'm surprised about what had happened in this election. I would have never imagined that Trump would win all the battleground states. I mean, that is just incredible to me. It's obviously very disappointing for me as a Democrat. It's really upsetting because we worked really hard for Kamala Harris. We did our best, but obviously we fell short on that. And we've got to pick up the pieces and figure out what went wrong and move forward because we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We can't just pack up and take our ball and go home. We've got to continue this fight. We've got to fight for our values. And we've got to reach out to these voters that turned us down a few days ago. And we've got to figure out why that happened so that we can win these future elections.
But there are issues that are mostly Democratic, like the propositions on the ballot that passed.
Yeah.
But the presidential candidate, lost. I mean, there's that question on the Republican side, too, with Trump winning and Kari Lake is behind in her race as well.
Yeah.
So it's really a mixed bag for voters on the things that they voted for. What do you think were the biggest issues that created this?
Yeah, I mean, abortion, the 139 passed overwhelmingly, which was, I think it was a good thing. But again, people want to control their own bodies. I think at the end of the day, that's what they wanted. They wanted to control their own healthcare decisions for themselves. But what's amazing to me is that I saw an interview with an ASU student where she said she voted for Donald Trump because he didn't want a national abortion ban. And it's like, do we have uneducated people that don't understand that he's the one who caused this? He's the one who helped overturn Roe versus Wade. So we've got to do a better job of educating people on the policy positions because I think obviously people were misinformed on that. Some people were misinformed on that. But yeah, I mean, again, for the Roe versus Wade, people want to control their own decisions. But unfortunately, the immigration issue for a lot of people just overrode. They wanted to protect their own healthcare choices, but they were afraid of immigrants. And Donald Trump and the Republicans
is it really that they're afraid of immigrants or they're afraid of unvetted immigrants?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yes, correct. I'm sorry. They were afraid of these things because Donald Trump and the Republicans just for months just relentlessly talked about people coming across the border and violent crimes and gangs and things like that. So, that's unfortunately that message got across. But Ruben Gallego won, which is great. And I think it just also for that, it just shows that Kari Lake was just a deeply unpopular candidate.
So as you look at the whole of the picture, let's talk about the state of the Democratic Party in the state of Arizona. Donald Trump wins, Ruben Gallego likely to win.
Yep.
Do you consider this a net positive election for the Arizona Democratic Party?
No, I don't. I mean, Donald Trump won Arizona, so it's a negative for us, unfortunately. We did not get across this finish line. I don't know the final results, obviously, but we're probably not going to take the House of majority in the state legislature. It seems that way as of right now. We still do have a lot of ballots to go, but we're going to fall a little bit short on that, and that's unfortunate because that was a major goal that we thought we'd be able to accomplish this cycle.
All right, once again, that is Steven Slugocki, former Democratic County Chair, with some analysis this morning with Jamie West and me on Arizona's Morning News about where the Democratic Party needs to go from here. A few months ago, in fact, I believe it was back in May, when the state legislature referred something to the ballot, Prop 314, Sheriff Mark Dannels of Cochise County told me this about what's been commonly known as the Protect the Border Act.
We understand the frustration, the intent, and the spirit behind the bill. We truly do, and we really believe the state's going to pass it.
However,
this is an unfunded mandate for sheriffs and law enforcement. There is no funding attached to this.
And he was very worried about his limited jail space.
We can't set aside our child molesters, our murderers, our bad, evil people that need to be in jail and give that up for 30 days worth of somebody came across the border illegally for trespass, and they're taking that bed space.
So let's talk with Sheriff Dannels live now. He joins us from Cochise County here on KTAR News. Good to talk to you for once when the sun's up. Sheriff Dannels, we always seem to be talking when in the early morning hours. I appreciate your time. Do you feel better now about 314 now that it's passed? Have you had lots of conversations with folks at the legislature to make sure that this is not an unfunded mandate?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Jim, and it's nice to see you during the daylight hours. And so the reality is struck now. The bill had passed like we predicted. Arizona sheriffs predicted this. And now that it's passed is where do we go from here? Where's the legal guidance from our county attorney's office? Where is the funding behind this? And where's the infrastructure support for this? Because all three right now we're waiting for answers on. And to include, where's our governor at? We had a meeting with our governor's staff here in Arizona on Monday. The governor was not present at that meeting, in fairness. But the question was posed, the second time I posed it is, where is Governor Hobbs on this bill? This is not a local bill. This is not a county bill. This is a state bill.
Right.
So how is the governor going to support us, stand aligned with the Arizona sheriffs and Arizona police chiefs? Because this is the will of the people now. They said this is what we want. So how do we address it here, and what's it going to look like?
Yeah, it doesn't matter that she didn't get a chance to affix her signature or a veto to it because it's happening. It's here. It's with us. So it's go time. Do you still have those same concerns that you mentioned to me and Jamie West a few months ago about maybe having to release some people, not so good people, from your jail system in order to make room for those who are going to be crossing the border illegally?
Well, it's a big concern is the fact that how do I address this? Right now, we have a change of election here when it comes to the White House. We're going to have President Trump coming in, who has a strong record on the border. And one of his priorities, he told me that when he was in Cochise County a couple months ago, that he's going to address this immediately. And I worked with him when he was former president. And where's the current administration for the next 2 months? I just read an email just a few minutes ago where they're saying that Mexico is going to release the people to come across that have been held back in Mexico. It's just like an open ball field right now. And who's the coach? We don't know. And so we have to be working together, state, local, and federal, because the concerns are still valid. In fact, they're more valid now because I don't have any answers at all.
Are you feeling a little more relieved, though, that Donald Trump is going to be in the White House? He's going to be heading up this administration, that you'll get more help on the sides as far as federal help goes? The Border Patrol is going to step up more, and that you won't necessarily have to have local and Arizona law enforcement enforcing this law.
Well, that's part of the frustration with this bill, and I didn't mention that, is the fact that we're doing the job of the federal government. Now that we have a president who has a very strong track record on border security, whether you like him or not, or you're happy he got voted in or not, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
His history, his report card is very strong on border security. And based on what he's told me and the engagement we've had with him when he was president, I feel very optimistic that this might be lessened in the fact that the federal government is going to go back and secure this border, which takes away a lot of that pressure from local law enforcement to do that, and the state. Not that this won't be a tool in our tool chest for law enforcement. The bottom line, let the federal government do the job that they were elected to do.
By the way, I guess I should mention this first. I should have said, since this is an election special, I should have said congratulations in winning your election in Cochise County, which, by the way, was you ran unopposed because I think people really like you in Cochise County, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I've always said this, Jim, I've been a cop 40 years. I just hit my 40th year. 40 years ago, I was in the police academy. And I say this to people all the time, the fact that the rule of law is what I govern. And I govern to protect the people and their quality of life. And I don't deviate that for political reasons, for ideologies, or for emotions. And not that emotions doesn't affect our job, it does. But when it comes to the rule of law, that shouldn't be tampered with for politics, emotions, sensations, or even opinions. So, and I have a very strong military base here in Cochise County, and they understand patriotic approaches. They understand the country, community, and disciplines.
You mentioned that there could be a release of people to cross the border coming up soon. Do you think that that's going to be timed out so to get all these people across the border before Donald Trump takes office?
Well, they have nothing to lose. They have everything to gain right now. You have a border that's been in turmoil. Pick a term. You don't like the word turmoil, crisis, unmanageable, just so I don't offend anybody on your show. The bottom line, it hasn't been in good shape. So now you have a president that's going out. You have a vice president just got beaten in the election. Homeland Security Secretary that has not been engaged. I don't be mean with that, but he hasn't. And so who's governing our border right now? And you have a president, I was told, now how true it is, I don't know. Before I came on your show, was that President Trump's already addressing Mexico and say, hey, help us address this. So again, I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you one thing. In the last 24 hours, we've had a couple pursuits. We took down a stash house last night. And let me just say this on the stash house. We did a search warrant, and this is all local stuff. We did the stash house last night, and one of the reporters that was riding with my interdiction team said this. She goes, I've never seen such deplorable conditions that human beings are living in. Welcome to the world of border crime and smuggling and trafficking. It's horrible. We need to get some action on this right away.
Yeah, and as I've said many times too, what goes on the border, it's not only not good for the American citizens on this side of the border, it's not safe for the people who are crossing the border in a lot of cases. They're working with some of the most evil people in the Western Hemisphere, the drug cartels.
You're 100% correct on that, Jim. And this is what really mystifies me, that we've infected our country and we've had criminals in this country from all over the United States come and partner up with this international criminal organization called the cartels to infect our country with illicit drugs and kill Americans, to traffic children, to smuggle people. That's just, to me, it's servant. It's just like trafficking. It's modern day slavery. We have to do a better job, but don't worry, that starts at the White House and it starts in Congress. And until they engage, and we're hoping to see a big difference here in January, not being political with that, but I'm hoping we got our hopes up that this is going to change.
All right. So bottom line, as we let you go here, Sheriff Mark Dannels of Cochise County, you're not exactly thrilled that you have this unfunded mandate passed in Prop 314, but you think you're going to get some federal help to maybe mitigate those issues that you had with it.
That's 100% correct, Jim, on that fact. And the thing is, it's a will of the people. And I've heard that other law enforcement leaders, even sheriffs, saying we're not going to enforce that law. I don't have the authority to turn my back on the will of the people. And if I do turn my back on them, I shouldn't be sheriff. We have to find a way forward on this, working with the people.
All right. Once again, that is Sheriff Mark Dannels of Cochise County. Thanks again for your time. And thanks to all of my guests today here on our election special.
Thanks for watching the AZ Political Podcast with Jim Sharpe. Click the box to watch more from KTAR News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.